Hello, fellow light being humans. This is Mahadeva, the Thunder Wizard. I hope you're all doing well. So I want to continue to delve into the mystery surrounding the Nagas. And I'm now going to talk a little bit more about some of the mythology and explain what some of the mythology I think means based on some recent interactions I've had in meditative states with Naga beings. So we're going to be talking about, mainly we're going to be talking about the two kings. There are two Naga kings. One is named Shesha and the other one is named Vasuki. So Vasuki is the one that I've been working directly with. But he has, I think it's his brother, and his name is Shesha. Shesha is associated with Vishnu, and Vasuki is associated with Shiva. So let's delve into it. As you can see, the name of the video is How Nagas Serve the Gods. So I want to be very respectful to these consciousness, these beings. One of the things that I've learned as a result of, bear in mind, the level of interaction and conscious communication that I'm having with these entities is a new thing for me. I've been in communication with them, pretty much my whole life. You just don't realize when you get an intuition or you have a dream or something like that. Most people don't realize that these are oftentimes, not all times, sometimes it's coming from us. In fact, a lot of times it's coming from us, but also a lot of the times we're getting direct communications from beings outside of our dimension who are trying to guide us and help us. And we don't really know where this information comes from. This is definitely true with artists and writers, and I'm going to prove that to you today because I'm going to share with you a video I made probably 6 or 7 years ago and I didn't even remember it, but I started making some videos about Nagas for other reasons. And in that fictional experience that I wrote, which was an artistic license for me to share my intuitions and my thoughts and try and teach, it turns out that was a direct communication, and it ended up foreshadowing what ended up happening to me this past year and a half. So if you're new to the channel, what happened is in June of 2022, I'm going to sneeze. Am I going to sneeze? Okay, had to get that up. In June of 2022, I did human-initiated contact with extraterrestrials, also known as CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Protocols. Look it up, CE5 Protocols. You can learn how to do it yourself, or you can do the free guided interdimensional meditation videos I have on my channel. Go and look at the playlist for that. While you're at it, since I'm on that subject, the 3 things I want you to do if you're new to this channel is I want you to go to the playlists on my YouTube channel, free. Go and do the interdimensional meditation, the guided interdimensional meditations, whichever one you want. Do the Huul breath, Huul breath, or the Awakening the Immortals, or any Qigong practice you want or meditation you want. And then also take a look at the 12 steps to 5D. Those are free, and if you do one of those from each one of those playlists, at least one of those per day, consistently you will achieve a shift. When you experience the energy from the Qigong, like Awakening the Immortals, if you want more powerful, concentrated focus and teaching in that, then go here to the thunderwizard.com website and subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. All right. So a year and a half ago, I started interacting with higher dimensional beings. My first teacher was a 7-foot mantis being who initiated me into a very powerful spiritual path with them, which really what he did is he opened up direct communication. So now I have an ability that I didn't have before, which was I can go into meditation, and if I go through certain protocol, which I teach you in the interdimensional meditation, I can communicate directly with deities, powers, entities. Nagas themselves will communicate with me directly. So when I go and have these experiences and these communications, I come back with some interesting, sometimes confusing knowledge, and then I realize that when I look at the mythology, I realize that the mythology is actually what these beings are saying. So any true mythology is not a made-up story. It is channeled information. So anyway, let's get into the teaching here. So we've got how the Nagas serve the gods. Shesha serves Vishnu in the 3rd dimension. Vasuki controls Shiva in the 5th dimension. And to better understand what Nagas really are, I'm going to show you how they, specifically this one, Vasuki, how he showed me the dimensions, the worlds, and how he envelops them. So bear in mind, every time in mythology, when you're dealing with a serpent being, it is always associated with enveloping worlds. And usually we experience them as negative forces. So Indra fought against Vritra, which is exactly the same. It's just the exact same scenario, but a different, slightly different interpretation of the same message, which the Norse have. Thunar, or Thor, fights with the world serpent. And so Indra, the reason why Indra fights against the serpent isn't because the serpent is negative. Because what the serpents do, what these Naga serpents do, is they bring some kind of limitation. So without the world serpent, without Vritra in the Vedic, without the world serpent in the Germanic tradition, there wouldn't be any manifested life, because we need to have limitation in order for things to be specific. So for me to be a specific height, weight, all of that, age, that means that matter and energy is being constricted into something very specific and physical. And so the planet Jupiter actually saves our planet from this big giant belt of asteroids in it. And the Jupiter has the largest electromagnetic field and the largest gravity field of any of the planets except for the sun. And because of that, Jupiter actually keeps us safe by keeping all of these nasty asteroids and planet killers away from us. And in the myths, Indra and Thor fight for human beings, because if there's too much limitation, then nothing can happen. So we need to have an expansive energy which fights against the constricting energy. All right, that's just Vritra. But I'm using Vritra as an example because we're going to talk about him if I play the upcoming video, if I have time. But he's a specific Naga that without him there wouldn't be any physical reality. Nothing would be able to consolidate into physical form. But we still need the power of Indra, we need the power of Thor, the lightning god, the Jupiter god, the priest, to give us our expansive identity. So I don't want to get too into it, what Thor does with the giants and all of that, but he protects our identity. But our identity also would be meaningless if it weren't constricted. All right. So let's move on to the two I really want to talk about today, which are Shesha and Vasuki. I've talked a little bit about Vasuki already, so if you've already been watching, I'll just go straight to Shesha. And what really struck me, by the way, I want to tell you, I was gonna name this How Nagas Control the Gods. That's why it says Shesha controls Vishnu and Vasuki controls Shiva. But as soon as I made this up and I put it up there, the Nagas, energetically texted me, like, we got to talk to you. So I went into meditation. It was just a few minutes ago, and I talked to them. They said, "We don't control them. You're making us sound more negative than we are. We serve the gods. We are servants of the gods. We do not control them. It may look that way to you, and we do have a huge amount of influence, but the influence that we have over the dimensions and over reality is directly dependent upon the wishes of the gods. We serve them. We do not control them." So as you can see, I had to go change that word. That's why it looks out of place there, because I wanted to honor them, because they really want to help us understand this. All right, so we need to look at this. So this is the closest I could get to explain how it was shown to me. So that onion there, you see that, that big thing in the middle, you can look at that as a shaft of light. That is consciousness. That is Shiva. You want to call it God, you can call it God. And this goes all the way from the bottom all the way to the top, and it goes straight through. Now the lines that you see, the layers of the onions that you see that come together at the bottom and the top, those are the different dimensions. So, first, second, third, all the way up to however many dimensions, they wrap around and meet. So at the top, where Shiva resides, Shiva sits at the top of Mount. By the way, this is a very real thing. There's a reason why nobody has climbed Mount, what's the name? I'm sorry, it's very hard for me to remember names when I'm doing these things because so much energy is coming through me. But Shiva's mountain in the Himalayas. There's a reason why nobody's climbed it, and that's because Shiva's actually sitting up there. That energy is really there. But also at the top of the dimensions, where the dimensions, all of them come together. They come together and they merge. At the top of that, Shiva sits at the top of that. He is consciousness. This is why Brahma, in the mythology, Vishnu and Brahma, they both saw this shaft of light, and they went to go see what they could find. And Vishnu said, "I'll go to the top and look for where it ends, and you go down to the bottom and see if you can find where it ends." And they both came back after doing that, and Brahma had lied. He said, "Yeah, I found the bottom. I found where he started." And Vishnu said, "I couldn't find the top. I couldn't find where he ended." And at that point, out of the column of light, Shiva stepped out and he cursed Brahma. And that's because Brahma is part of this. He's encapsulated within this. He is this, if we're being honest. Brahma comes from the root to expand, which is in the Norse tradition the god Buri. Buri and Brahma come from the same root of Br, which means to expand. And so he is the egg. He expands. So all of creation is within the egg that he expands. But he can't go beyond it. Vishnu can at least approach going beyond it because he's the soul. But Shiva is both inside and outside of all of this. And so it's very right that Vishnu says, "I couldn't find the end of it." But Brahma, because he has an ego, needs to feel that he knows how everything is. And he can't imagine anything outside of himself. So that's why Shiva cursed him. And that's why very few people worship Brahma. However, if there are some Brahma mantras that are incredibly powerful and will give you tremendous wisdom about this created reality. Anyway, I digest. So at the bottom of this, this onion of layers of dimensions, when they come together, at the bottom is Vasuki. And Vasuki is actually, that whole onion could be Vasuki. He surrounds all of the dimensions. And it gives him tremendous power. He has the ability, with a thought, with an intention, to vibrate all of the dimensional layers of dimensions. And so he can be in all of the dimensions and change time, and he can do all kinds of incredibly powerful things. This is why there's so much fear around the Nagas. They have tremendous power. And that's why I was tempted to say they control the gods until, Vasuki said, no, we don't control the gods, we serve them. So whatever it is that we do, it's because the gods are directing us to do it. So we've talked about Vasuki and Shiva. We've talked about Shiva absorbing the poison, which is when Vasuki was being used to stir up the ocean of milk, he vomited out a bunch of poison. What that represents is, in order to create this reality, he had to get rid of the knowledge of the truth, which is that there is no physical reality. All of the dimensions are all, different versions of Maya. And to live within any of the dimensions, by the way, gods live in certain dimensions. The higher you go in the dimensions, the more powerful the deities become. And just to be clear, deities are no different than you and I, except for the fact that they are in higher dimensions. If you could be fully 100%, if all of your consciousness could be in the 10th or 11th dimension, you would be a deity. And many of you are already. And your rays of consciousness are in different dimensions, including this one. And we're getting into some, this endless little mystery here. So at the top, Vasuki is also at the top. He's up there around Shiva's neck. It's not around his neck there. He's around Shiva's neck, which has to do with the poison. He's around his arms. So the poison represents the knowledge, the true knowledge that true spirit is beyond all of the dimensions, all created reality. And it's poison because if you become aware of this, then you can no longer exist in any of the Mayas, in any of the dimensions. You can't exist in there. If you completely, totally absorb the poison, it'll kill any part of you that is physically created. And so that's why Shiva drank the poison, because he can process it. That's why worshiping Shiva can help you go beyond physical manifestation, and it can be a pleasant journey. Whereas if you were just given the straight knowledge without any ability to process it, you would just you'd cease existing. You'd go 100% into spirit, but you wouldn't be able to exist with that knowledge. It'd be too difficult. So understanding that, Shiva is the destroyer, and he destroys illusion. And he does his dance, he creates new realities. So this time that we're in right now, which is a shift in, going to 5D, this is a time to worship Shiva more than ever. Worshiping Shiva will give you the ability to make this shift and still stay physically, still be a physical entity, even if you shift up to a higher level. This is also true about Odin, by the way. Odin sacrificed himself to himself on the Tree of Life, And as a result, he became the only deity in the Norse pantheon who can travel to any of the 9 worlds. He can travel to any of the 9 worlds and still hold on to his identity. The North, the realm of the ice realm, the mist home, that you can't go into. If you and I were to go into that dimension, the mist home, we would cease to exist. Shiva and Odin are the same person, in case you didn't know. Odin is the only one able to go into that and survive because he's able to keep his identity in a realm that won't allow anybody else to consolidate into a specific form. And again, if you haven't read my books, please do. You can get my books, michaelwilliamdenny.com, and I have books in there where I've written about how Shiva and Odin are the same being in the Indo-European tradition. And that's one way we know that is that they share the same name. So one of the names of Shiva is Ugra, which means terrifying. This is why he's terrifying. He's not terrifying because he's trying to cause you pain or fear. It's that if you see him in his multi-dimensional form, you will begin to stop being able to coalesce into the 3rd dimension, and it will literally start killing you. And it's frightening. It's frightening to evolve beyond your attachments to the 3rd dimension. So it's terrifying, actually. But if you aren't attached, then he becomes Mahadeva. He becomes the great light. He becomes the great Lord. Same thing with Kali. Kali is the Saturnian aspect of the feminine, and she represents destruction only because when you go beyond your karmas, you begin to slip out of the attachment to the 3rd dimension. And when you're attached to your karmas and Kali appears to you, she appears to you as this fierce, horrifically frightening Ugra deity, where she has severed heads, or I can't remember if she has skulls or severed heads. I confuse her and Tara. But she has a skirt made of severed human arms, and she has blood coming out of her mouth, and she's crazed. And that's because she is devouring the demons of your internal strife, your self-directed negativity. Your insecurity, your shame, your fear, your lust, your greed, she consumes them. And if you're attached to that, if you're attached to your lust, for example, and Kali comes in to free you from that, you will see her as this horrifying being. And you will think she's coming to devour you because you're attached to the thing she wants to destroy. And so this is why Shiva is Ugra. And Odin, in the Germanic, his name is Ug, which is the same word. Ugra and Ug are the same Indo-European word, which means terrifying. In fact, the word ugly, Ugliche, is an adverb for something that acts terrifying. We've changed it now. Ugly is an unpleasant thing to look at, but it used to mean terrifying. So Odin and Shiva are the same being, and he has the power to go beyond limited reality and hold on to his consciousness. And this is what he's here to teach us to do. To hold on to our consciousness, our true spirit consciousness, our soul consciousness, while we transcend out of the limitation, in this case, of 3-dimensional reality. So Vishnu is taking a back seat to what's happening now. And when you understand his connection to the Naga Shesha, you'll understand why. So, again, this is really helpful I think it's really helpful to understand Indo-European religion and be able to look at the different offshoots of that. So Vedic Hinduism is an offshoot of the original Indo-European religion. The Germanic polytheism, paganism, that people like myself are interested in practice, that is also an offshoot of the original. Now, each of them share things, and you can learn from each other. So there are things in the Vedic tradition that are very ancient that didn't make it into the Norse tradition. And there are a ton of things in the Norse tradition that represent the original Indo-European tradition that somehow got lost in the Vedic tradition. So that's why I like looking at both of them. I forgot what point I was trying to make with that, but I remember that. So in the Vedic tradition, you hear about the Devas versus the Asuras. If you ask a Vedic Hindu and you say, what's an Asura? They will say, Asuras are demons. And when they talk about the war between the Devas and the Asuras, they make it sound like the Asuras are selfish, destructive, evil demons, and that the Devas are the gods, and there's this, the gods and the devils. And that's not accurate. Now, they kind of understand it better than we Westerners. We Westerners tend to project Abrahamic dualism onto that, and, that's not accurate. But the Asuras are not demons. They are the forces of manifestation. They are powers. Asura means power. Indra himself in the original Vedic is called an Asura. Many of the gods are called Asuras. That's why the direct transliteration of that word into the Norse is Aesir. Aesir and Asura sound the same because they're the same word. So in the Norse tradition, it's the the Aesir versus the Vanir. Vanir comes from the word for Venus. And in the Vedic tradition, Venus is the chief priest of the Asuras. He is the teacher of the Asuras, the guru of the Asuras. So what ended up happening, I don't know the whole thing. Something happened linguistically where the term Asura, which used to mean God, in the same way now that the word Deva means God, the word Asura became transposed and became basically the equivalent to the word Vanir. So Deva Asura war is the same as the Aesir Vanir. All right. So whenever you hear Asura, think Vanir. So who are the Vanir? Freyja is one of the Vanir. Frey, Njord, which is the god Saturn. These are the Vanirs, which again, it comes from the root where we get the word Venus. And what is Venus about? Venus is all about enjoying the Maya, the illusion of physical reality, enjoying food, drink, love, relationships, sex, pleasant clothes, art, beauty, sports, all the things associated with having fun in the third dimension, and using the third dimension as an altar to worship the spirit, which is what Freya does, which is what Lakshmi does. But this is about being in the third dimension. It's about being attached to the third dimension in a spiritual way, where being manifest, incarnated in the third dimension is a form of worship. You're experiencing the beauty of created reality, because when you're just a beam of light, outside of manifested reality, you're full of bliss, you're full of consciousness, but you can't do anything with it. You need to be limited so you can walk around and touch things and experience things. And the whole point of us being incarnated is so that we can overcome all of this illusion that we're limited, and we can begin to create reality. We can become gods ourselves, because we all have the power to create our own reality, as you know if you've been on my channel long enough. So the point I'm trying to make is I'm trying to help you understand why Vishnu is so associated with the third dimension. So Vishnu is the preserver. Vishnu is far more popular historically than Shiva. If I'm correct, I think Vishnu is even an older god, that Shiva is a latecomer, just like Odin is a latecomer, relatively new. Odin didn't show up until a couple thousand years ago. Before then, Odin didn't exist in the European tradition. Same is true in the Vedic tradition. As a god that, part of the Trinity to worship, Shiva didn't exist. He was known as Rudra, and actually the name Shiva was attributed to Indra. Indra had some of the characteristics of Shiva and was called Shiva, which means auspicious. But then later on, Shiva emerged at the same time historically that Odin emerged in Europe. And that's because we are getting, even back then, we were getting closer to this point in time that we're at now, where we're going to ascend. This third dimensional reality we're in will be destroyed and will be rebuilt. It will be, a new reality will be created. And so Shiva has to do his dance. He has to do his dance of destruction. Odin has to do his job as the leader of the hunt, the wild hunt, where people, he's a frightening being. But we have to destroy this limitation. So traditionally, Vishnu is here to preserve this world. Now, that is a challenge if you're attached. So in order to be a human being, you have to be attached to the third dimension. You have to be attached to your limitation. This is why we're afraid of death. The truth is, there's no such thing. There is no such thing as death. In fact, when you physically die, your soul leaves your three-dimensional body and goes to a more real physical experience. So if you think that when you die you become a spirit and you're no longer walking around doing things, it's actually not true. When you die, after you go through whatever you have to do, usually it takes about 40 days. That's why people mourn the dead for 40 days. After 40 days, the soul becomes aware that they're not human anymore, and they let go of all of their attachments and relationships, and then they go off to wherever they're going to go, and they go to other realms that are physical, but it's even more real than this. If you've ever had a shamanic dream, if you've ever had a lucid dream, you know that those dreams are more real than this reality. If you've had a near-death experience, you know that the spirit world is more real than this. You're walking around in a body. You just have the ability to change things. You can change how you look. You can create things, like that. But it's a whole different reality. This is just one of many realities, and it's actually a very dense reality, and that's why it feels so unreal. This is why you feel so disconnected, because you are. You're disconnected from that higher physical reality. Again, this is what the new 5D world is going to mimic. It's going to be closer to that. All right, so Vishnu is about preserving this third dimension, but he is served by a Naga called Shesha, or Ananta. And Shesha, in fact, it says that Vishnu lies upon him. He reclines upon Shesha. Now, look back at the onion here. Remember that the Nagas surround all of the dimensions. So since Vishnu is the god of the third dimension, he is within it. Shesha is actually, he rests on him. And what happens with Shiva? It's different with Shiva. Vasuki, he doesn't rest on Vasuki. Vasuki is around his wrist and around his neck, and then one of the names of Shiva is Nageshwara, which means Lord of the Nagas. So Vishnu is, this is where I kind of got into, the Nagas had to correct me on it, because when I think about that, it kind of sounds like Shiva is dependent upon the Naga Shesha, because he's part of this 3D reality. To underscore that point even more, the feminine aspect of Vishnu is whom? The goddess of the planet Venus, Lakshmi. Lakshmi, the Vedics would never say this because they've changed their definitions about things, but we already know in the Norse tradition that Freja, which is the equivalent of, which is Lakshmi, Freja is a Vanir. She's an Asura, what the Devas, what the Vedics would call an Asura. She's a Vanir. She is part of 3D physical reality. She's a god. Sure, she can go beyond it. She can go in it. She's part of it. She's manifest in it. But she is about this physical reality. And the reason why human beings have worshipped Lakshmi and Vishnu in all of his forms, whether it be Rama or whether it be Buddha or whether it be Krishna, those are the three big ones. Even Jesus sort of mimics Vishnu as well. The reason why people worship those gods so much is because their 3D self wants to be safe in the third dimension. And so what Vishnu does is he's trying to keep you connected to your spiritual path while being physical. So that's why if like, let's say for instance, you talk to a Krishna devotee and you say, what should I do during an eclipse? A Krishna devotee, a worshiper of Vishnu will say, well, what you need to do is you need to go inside, you need to close all the windows so that the light of that solar eclipse doesn't hit you. And you need to light candles and you need to chant to Vishnu, the preserver, so that your life can be preserved because it's very dangerous. And what do the Aghoris do? Which is so completely opposite. The worshippers of Shiva, who worship in the cremation grounds, who worship around dead bodies and, all that kind of stuff. Naked, and they do all the things that you're not supposed to do. They use intoxicants, all that. They do tantric stuff. They do sexual magic. Why are they so completely opposite? If you ask them, they're going to say, oh, when there's an eclipse, I stand right underneath it and I do mantras and I let the power of the eclipse empower me. It's completely opposite. And that's because one is focused on Vishnu, which is preserving the third dimension, and one is focused on destroying the limitations of the third dimension and going beyond. And these eclipses, which are associated with Rahu and Ketu, by the way, I was corrected. As I was saying it, I knew that I was missing something. Vasuki did not directly become Rahu and Ketu. It was another Naga. A Naga who did that, and I can't remember his name offhand. But anyway, we can talk about that another time. But you get where I'm going with this. So Vishnu rests upon Shesha, which is he's a Naga that helps to create the limitation of the third dimension, and he is devoted to Vishnu, which is the soul. So Shesha is devoted to empowering the journey of your soul in the third dimension. And he serves you. This is important to remember this. The Nagas serve you in your path towards liberation. Vasuki, since he was the one who spat up the poison, which means the complete knowledge and awareness that this is an illusion. And, he aids Shiva. He serves Shiva because Shiva drank all the poison so that nobody else would be poisoned. So that's important to understand. We wouldn't be able to function in this world. We would probably be insane. We would be crazy because I know from personal experience, interacting with Nagas, interacting with higher dimensional beings, when they start showing you beyond the third dimension, and I'm half in and half out. I don't even know how much of me is in the fifth dimension, how much is in the third. I'm not completely here. And, it can be extremely challenging when your brain is trying to figure out, how can you be in multiple dimensions at the same time? How can you be in multiple times when your brain is trying to figure out where you've just experienced, it can be very damaging and it's poisonous. That knowledge is poisonous to the third dimensional mind, the third dimensional ego. And you have to have that if you're going to function here. So, let's see what else. Let me look at my notes and see if there was something else that I wanted to say about this. So we got the two kings, Shesha and Vasuki. Oh, here's an interesting one. So Rahu and Ketu, as you know, I think I can find out who actually is the Naga. Oh yeah, that's his name. Svarpanu. Svarpanu is the Naga who became Rahu and Ketu, and his name means splendor of radiance. So I'm now going to take what I see here, because now I did some research on Svarpanu for this, and I'm going to do my best to interpret that. I'm happy to be wrong. You know, I'm happy to be wrong about everything. I don't need to be right about any of this. But what Vasuki told me when I first met with him is that he, you know, we were in his realm of Patala Loka, which was the underworld, which is the bottom of the onion. So all of the dimensional walls come together in this one place called Patala Loka. That's why it's so powerful. That was confusing to me, because I'm like, the underworld, how can the underworld be a place of beauty where this incredibly powerful being lives and controls things? I was conflating it with the underworld of, you know, the psychological underworld, like hell or Hela, where the soul goes to, you know, work through all of its karmic attachments and all that. Well, this is even deeper than that. This is beneath all of the dimensions. So not just the underworld of the earth realm, but the underworld of everything. And this is where he lives, and I'm getting filled with energy as I talk about it. There's something going on today. I don't know if there's something with me, or if there's a solar storm hitting the earth, but I'm tons of energy hitting me today. Usually I have to wait until late afternoon or evening to do my interdimensional meditations and talk with these beings. I've been able to do it all day. So there's something going on today. Anyway, but at the bottom of all of the dimensions, which we would call the worlds, at the bottom of all the dimensions is Patala Loka, where Vasuki lives. And the way he described it like we were looking up at the sky, and there were these projections coming from Patala Loka. And the projection is of a Naga, a complete snake who represents karma and dharma. Karma is what brings you into this reality, and dharma is the path you follow to leave this reality. And this snake was not stuck in one dimension, but the projection of light going through that Naga, as it hit the walls of the third dimension, it ended up getting split into two. So we see this Naga Svarpanu, we see this Naga as being split into the head of the snake Rahu and the tail of the snake Ketu. But in reality, they are not separated. We only experience it because we live in a dualistic understanding. So that is how he explained it to me, that, you know, what happens is when those mathematical points get near the sun or the moon, it's like this light projection that sort of covers over our soul or our mind. But it's, as I said, it's in previous videos, I said that it's not doing anything to us. It's just we respond to what we think we're seeing and feeling. And if we're attached, we react negatively. And so this is where Rahu and Ketu cause all these problems. This is why all of this terrorism and war is going on, because human beings who are attached to the illusion of them being separated and all of that, Rahu and Ketu, that light comes into our sphere of influence, and we react to that from our attachment. But the truth is that that light up there, both Rahu and Ketu, as it moves around, those projections, if you're operating from your spirit, then this will be a Naga that will open up the portals of reality, and you will evolve. You will, this is why the Agoris during an eclipse will sit out under the eclipse, and they'll meditate and they'll do mantras, and do sacrifices or whatever during the eclipse, because they know this is a portal outside of the third dimension. The Krishna devotees, they're so wrapped up in being in the third dimension. I'm not judging them. That's their religion, is to find the truth within the third dimension by worshiping Krishna. They're so wrapped up in that for them, they don't want to leave this third dimension. They don't want to go out that portal. But if that portal light hits them, they're going to go through all of their issues, which for them is going to be very frightening and very painful. So they worship the god of preservation. And then Vishnu helps them through their pain, helps them through their fear, and helps them find solace and truth, and they become more empowered. That's their path. That would be called the right-hand path. Vishnu is the right-hand path, and Shiva is the left-hand path. By the way, most people that do Western magic and they talk about right hand and left hand, you're misunderstanding it. Hugely misunderstanding what those terms mean. We're in the same ballpark, but for the most part, you don't get it. Left-hand path is not about black magic. It's not about it. Left-hand path does have to do with Tantra, which means techniques, but it's not about what most Western magicians think it's about. It's not. It is frightening. It means leaving this third dimension and doing things that are forbidden. Why are they forbidden? Because on the right-hand path, for instance, right-hand path monks, like the Buddhist path, again, Buddhists, right-hand path, Buddhist path, the Shaolin, the Shaolin path, that is a right-hand path. So if you want to become a Shaolin monk, you become celibate. You become a hermit, a monk. You don't own anything. You live in the temple, and you follow all the rules. If you're going to do energy practice, you follow all of these rules for decades. Now, if you do what I did, which is the Taoist, the left-hand Taoist path, that's the path that goes straight to power. And you don't have to follow all those traditions. You can get straight to the power, but you have to die to yourself almost immediately. When I was doing in 923.thunderwizard.com here, the website, 923.thunderwizard.com, the Maoshan energy practices that I teach you there, when I was learning those things, the amount of energy that flowed through me was unbelievable. But after a couple of hours of that, I would end up in the fetal position, because I would then have to live through decades of unresolved karma and emotions, and it was very painful. But once you get through that, then you've freed up all this energy within you, and you have all of this energy. So the left-hand path is about going straight to the power, but you have to die to yourself, and it's very painful. Very difficult, very challenging. That's why it's looked upon as dark and black magic and all of that. And for those who do the right-hand path, they do the opposite. They take things very slowly. They avoid being stimulated in the negative, which is why they stay away from society so that they're not tempted by anything. And that they have to follow the path of discipline. That's the right-hand path. So we're talking about that. All of the world is going to have to follow the left-hand path, which doesn't mean that you have to do, any of the crazy stuff that Agoris do or anything like that. It means that you have to gain power quickly, and you have to die to yourself. You have to die to your attachments. The light beings have come to me numerous times, and now that I have enough time to look back on it, they'll come to me and they will say something that will make me aware of my mortality. So one of the last, not most recent, but one of the recent times they came to me, they said, your service on this planet has come to an end. And people are going to think you've died. You know, I mean, they're basically saying I'm going to physically die, although they didn't say that. But that's the feeling that, and I didn't want to hear that. And I had to struggle with that. But those communications were tactically, surgically done so that I could then begin to dissociate with the things I'm attached to in this reality. You know, wanting to have a career, wanting to have money, wanting to have reputation, wanting to think about the future and where am I going to go, and owning this and doing that. And, you know, it did its job because I started thinking that, okay, the flash is going to come any day now. I'm going to get ready to leave. They said I'm going to leave. I'm going to get ready to leave. I don't know when the flash is going to come, but I'm a hell of a lot less attached. I don't care nearly as much about anything here. The only thing I care about is my energetic and spiritual connection. All right, so I went off on a tangent there. I don't really know what I was talking about. So I was getting to the legend of how Rahu and Ketu came to be. And in that legend, after Vasuki has been used by the gods and the devas to stir up the ocean of milk, which released both the poison, which Shiva drank, and the nectar of immortality, which the gods selfishly kept to themselves and didn't give to the Asuras or the Vanir. So the poor Vanir didn't get any of that. But one Vanir, one Asura, who was a Naga named Svarbhanu, he got permission to drink the nectar of immortality, and the sun and the moon, the soul and the mind, saw him doing it and screamed to Vishnu, he's an Asura, kill him. I want you to think about that for a second. The devas are supposed to be these pure, you know, we worship the devas for purity and righteousness, but they engaged in a conspiracy against the poor powers of three-dimensional reality, the Vanir, the Asuras, those poor guys. The gods conspired against them so that they couldn't be immortal. And their justification for it was, we don't want the Asuras to control the world because they're evil. They're not. They're not evil. They're in a gray area, you know, but they're definitely not evil. In any case, nothing happens by chance. So one of the Asuras, Svarbhanu, who is a Naga, he drank the nectar of immortality, and Shiva chopped his head off with chakra, that his sacred weapon. So I want to explain that to you. Shiva didn't do it. Shiva would never do that. In fact, there are Asuras who have, in Vedic tradition, taken over the whole universe, controlled the whole universe because they worship Shiva. Shiva doesn't care. If you have the discipline to follow through and spend 10,000 years on one leg chanting Om Namah Shivaya or whatever it is, if you're able to pull that off so much that he has to appear in front of you, he will give you whatever you ask. He doesn't hold anything against you. Vishnu won't do that because, you know, the thing about the Asuras is, if you delve deeply into the powers of physical limitation in reality, you start to become unhappy. If you get too attached to it, you start to realize that this isn't where the truth is. And Vishnu says, listen, my job is to keep you happy in this. So I want you to follow your path, but I don't want you to drink that poison of awareness yet. Not while you're in your physical body. I'm here to help you with that. So follow the true path, focus on me. I will help you consolidate your 3D reality while at the same time focusing on your soul and learning all of the things that you're supposed to learn here. But the Asuras, if you go the path of the Asuras, you will go down a path that will eventually make you unhappy. you will find out that sex doesn't do it for you, money won't do it for you, fame won't do it for you, and then you won't have the proper understanding. You'll know, like many people do, that we live in a matrix, but those of you who believe we live in an evil matrix, it means you've gone down the path of the asuras to the point where you realize this 3D reality isn't where your true happiness lies, but you don't have the awareness that the poison gives you, which is the awareness of the true knowledge of your spirit. So you're worse off than anybody. You're so wrapped up in the third dimension, but there's no happiness in it, and you have no, so that's where all of this victim mentality comes from. This is what comes from people who say there are false beings of light trying to trap you. These are people who have bumped into the limitations of the third dimension and it's killing them, but they don't have a connection, at least they haven't made a conscious connection to their soul yet. And this is who Shiva is. It's a conscious connection to your soul. This is why, if you've noticed, Shiva's never really angry. He's just comfortable and happy all the time. Vishnu gets angry. Vishnu gets really angry. Narasimha. In fact, the only being that could calm the rage of Narasimha and keep him from destroying the world was Shiva. Because if you're attached to the third dimension, you get angry. If you're not attached, you don't get angry. Nothing bothers you. That's why Shiva can hang out with anybody. Hang out with prostitutes. He doesn't even say, you have to stop working as a prostitute or to the drug addict. You have to stop doing drugs. He doesn't tell anybody to stop doing anything. He says, hang out with me, whoever you are. I accept you no matter what. Vishnu doesn't. Vishnu has rules. You got to follow the rules if you want to follow Vishnu. And if you want to stay in the third dimension, you have to follow the rules. Anyway, that's all coming apart. So the reason why Vishnu chopped off his head was because it is the third dimension that splits Svarbhanu into a dualist being. In the third dimension, we only see him as either Rahu or Ketu. We don't see him as a complete being. He's a complete being, but he's interweaving between dimensions. If you want to get to the fifth dimension, worship Ketu. It won't necessarily be a pleasant ride unless you worship Ganesha, which is the pleasant form of Ketu. But if you worship Ketu, you'll get to the fifth dimension, because that's the tail. Disconnection from this reality. That's why he's the god of death. That's why he's so focused, associated with so much destruction. But that's because that tail is not here. When you're looking at the head of Rahu here and the tail over here, you think the tail is disconnected, but it's actually the head is here and the tail is here, and this in between is the veil of the third dimension. This is the fifth dimension, this is the third dimension. This is Rahu, this is Ketu. They're actually still connected. But when we're in the third dimension, they go like this. Because the light of that, by the way, the name of Svarbhanu is the splendor of radiance. What is radiance? Light. He is a being of light that when he hits the dimensional boundary of the third dimension, it refracts him and he splits into two. So it's an illusion. And that's what Vasuki told me. He said, Rahu and Ketu are these projections onto the wall of the third dimension where you think you're seeing two different beings, but it's actually one. And to understand that these dimensions, we might even say that the dimensions themselves are Nagas. I just got hit with a bunch of energy, so I'm onto something. So if you look at the onion here, you can see those lines, which are those those different peels of the onion, different layers of the onion. If you want to take each one of those little red lines as a Naga, that is separating dimensions from each other. And at the bottom of that is the Lord of the Nagas, which is Vasuki. Anyway, let's see, was there anything else that I wanted to say? I think I've opened that can of worms. Meditate on it. The truth is, I get these things and I do my best to put it into words, but I can't. So let's see, how long have I been talking? I'm going to go ahead and play this anyway. So I made a video I was going to make a whole series of videos. They were fictional. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to explain to people, because people were getting wrapped up in reptilians, evil reptilians, and all of that stuff. And I was trying to help people understand that the power behind the Nagas is actually incredibly important, but because we are limited three-dimensional people, we become deceived. And like Rahu and Ketu, like Loki, who is associated with serpents as well, Loki will do one of two things. He will either stimulate you to act from your unconsciousness, which will speed up the pain, which will force you to wake up. Or if you're following a spiritual path, he will open up the blinds and let you see what's really going on behind the scenes. So in the Norse tradition, Loki, if it weren't for Loki, none of the gods would have any of their powers. None of the gods would have any of their, like Odin wouldn't have his horse, Thor wouldn't have his hammer. So Loki is responsible for that. But at the same time, Loki hates ego. He can't stand people being inauthentic, and he can't stand people not worshiping and honoring the sacred. And so that's what got Loki into trouble is he walked into the gods and they were all partying and they were doing, I won't get into all that, but it enraged Loki to such a degree that he started telling the truth. He started telling all of the gods' secrets because they were acting, out of ego. And that made the gods so angry that they put him underneath the earth and they tied him to a rock, and a snake was dropping venom on him. And all of this is connected. We could get into that. But that's what these Naga energies can do. When a Naga energy hits you, you will have to respond. You will either choose to respond from your fear and you will become more entrenched, and then we can say, see, Rahu turned him into a drug addict. Or you could, a Naga could interact with you and you could respond to that by surrendering to your soul on a deeper level, letting go of your attachments, going through the pain and the mourning of detaching from the third dimension, and then Ketu will take you to the realm of the spirit. So it all depends on how you respond to them. So what I found very interesting is I wrote this. I was going to write this whole book and I ended up not doing it, but I ended up writing this video. And I did it, as I said, to show people the truth behind the Nagas. And what started happening is this dialogue, as the writer, I start having this dialogue as I'm writing it between this character of the Naga, which I called Vritra, which actually we would call this being Vasuki. But we can use Vritra for now. But Vritra started interacting with my character in ways that was shocking to me. And what is really blowing my mind is about 90% of what I wrote turned out to be what actually happened after I started consciously interacting with light beings and Nagas. So it was prophetic, because now I'm living this thing I was trying to write about. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and play that for you, and then it will only be a couple minutes long, but we'll go ahead. Many of you might have already seen it, but let's just go ahead and get started. One evening at sunset, I sat down to meditate as I often do, chanting the sacred sound of Mother Earth. I allowed the heavenly energy of Father Sky to descend down through my crown chakra, down the central channel of my body, and exit out my feet into the earth. Then, as always, I invited the deep, powerful energy of Mother Earth to ascend up through my feet, up into my heart, where the energies of Father Sky and Mother Earth could unite in bliss. As my body filled and pulsed with the combined power of water and heaven, I felt myself slip out of my body. My spirit descended down past the floor, down through the earth's crust, deeper and deeper into the center of the earth. My descent began to slow and finally came to a stop. The soft red glowing light of the underworld slowly came into focus. I found myself in a cavern. I could see the orange light of fires dancing on the cavern walls. I could vaguely make out shadows moving in the distance. I could see the primitive paintings on the cave wall depicting animals of all kinds. It reminded me of the pictures of Ice Age cave paintings in Europe. As my spiritual eyes focused in front of me, the shadow looming above me transformed into an enormous serpent being. It looked like a giant king cobra with intense burning eyes. Have you ever compared the eyes of a king cobra to other snakes? Cobras do not have reptilian slit-like eyes like other snakes have. The pupils of the eyes of cobras are round, like human eyes. This serpent being began staring right through me with his intense eyes and began to speak.
I am Vritra the Magnificent, the enveloper of worlds and ruler of the earth. You and I, son of Manu, have been working together for millions of years. I know of you as Maihtig, the shaman warrior, the slayer of demons, protector of the lesser Manu, the beloved of the Maghas, friend of the elders, student of the Wisdom Council, the Manu child who instills terror into the Naga-Titan alliance. You have arrived here again in my lair as you have thousands of times before in thousands of other lifetimes, after overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles and challenges in this incarnation. Now you are here to fulfill your soul destiny to help bring balance to the Manu and to usher in a new age of transformation in the universe. Even though you do not remember your ancient names, when I speak them to you, your spirit recalls them. That is why your head is spinning and you feel energy whirling around in your chest. You are recalibrating yourself to your ancient identity. The way to learn from me is to listen to my words with your being, with your blood. The truth of this knowledge will reveal itself to you as we go further. Your need to understand the causes of why humans continuously seek to be deceived will be fulfilled here with me. You will be responsible for the information I reveal to you. Before we go any further, you must decide, here and now, once and for all, if you accept the responsibility of this secret knowledge. You must be willing to act upon it and fulfill your destiny as liberator of the human race.
Liberator of the human race? I said incredulously.
Decide, right now. If you decline, you can return to your life as you know it with no recollection of this conversation, although you will always feel that something is missing. If you accept, your life as you know it now will be over, and you will expand your capacity to experience reality beyond your current limitations. This knowledge will destroy you and recreate you. You must decide. Do you accept responsibility for this knowledge?
I heard myself from deep within respond, "Yes, I accept."
Then hang on, son of Manu. It will be a very intense ride.
With that, I felt myself being pulled up through the earth's crust and back into my body, where I awoke with a scream. The next few days were uneventful, and I assumed it was all a meaningless dream. Then a few days later, the information started coming to me while in my conscious awareness, like an avalanche of compressed, holographic files of knowledge dumped into my soul. I began to understand truths, answers to questions I had carried within me my whole life. Knowledge so vast and deep that I was incapable of putting it into words. Yet I knew it was my life's work to put such knowledge into words to share with the human race. In fact, I became aware that it was my eternal destiny to spend my life putting into words and explaining to the world this deep and unfathomable knowledge. Vritra was right. My life had changed dramatically, and I could never go back to the life I had before meeting him, or rather, becoming reacquainted with him. All right, so there's that. Okay, so that's pretty much it for today. I looked up and down here, I didn't see any questions. I saw one question, or a couple of questions. Again, I try to follow questions of those of you who are subscribed to the Patreon 90-day challenge and have read the books and done things, because then you tend to ask questions I like. Okay, let's see where was the question? Where'd it go? So I think Thundra had a question. Where did she go? So there's TT. I don't know if you're subscribed or not, but let's see here. Why did the alien appear as a mantis to you? Because he was a mantis. That's his physical manifestation. So welcome to the channel. I see your name, but we've talked about this before. Have you read my books? I don't know how much of the channel and my work you're familiar with. It's a good question, though. ETs, you can call them alien. Alien means different. I tend not to call them aliens. They're extraterrestrials, but they're like us. They're exactly like us in the sense that they have a soul that's no different than yours or mine. But they happen to live on different planets. We have mantis insects here on this planet. And there's a reason why these insects are treated as special. You know, people, you know, there's all kinds of spiritual practices surrounding mantises, and there's a lot of spiritual practices that will open doorways to mantis beings, and you can learn from them. Especially there's some qigong practices that will, you know, including the ones that I teach that work directly with the mantis being energy. But the fact that we have snakes on this planet and the fact that we have mantis insects on this planet, those are directly from those beings. So those races wanted to have themselves represented so that we would be reminded both consciously and unconsciously. And in fact, while I was having a lot of ET activity, there was a mantis in my house that would, you know, appear on the wall and would stare at me, you know, like he was sitting there watching over me. And there have been times, you know, I've been outside, and those different kinds of insects would just flock around me and follow me, and I could tell it was them trying to get my attention. So it didn't appear as a mantis. It is a mantis. There's a race of people who have bodies that are, I don't know what the differences are, but if you look at them, they would look exactly like a mantis being. Same thing with Nagas. Nagas are there is an extraterrestrial race of cobras, you know, human-sized cobras. They're the masters of Kundalini, and they are the ones that gave Kundalini to human beings, as we, with the rest of many different light being civilizations, we created human beings And we implanted the Naga Kundalini power into our spinal column. And that's Patanjali is a Naga. Nagas can shapeshift between looking like humans and looking like they really are, which are giant cobras. So it didn't appear that way. That's what it was. That's who he is. And female mantis eat the male. So guys, look, don't piss me off. I don't like getting pissed off. So your mind is the yoni and his idea is the lingam. TT, too much thinking. Way too much thinking. My first thought is stop smoking so much pot. I have no idea if you do smoke pot or not. Way too much thinking. That's not a question that will help you. Ask a question that help. Here's a general rule, guys. If you want to ask me a question about something that will help you spiritually evolve. Don't show off. You know, this whole female mantis, the lingam and the mind, you're showing off. It's so intellectualized. Bring it back down to the level of your emotions and your spiritual advancement. Ask a question is that you need to know something for your empowerment and you don't have the answer. Why do I wear certain underarm deodorant? Why did he appear as a mantis? These are all intellectual musings that two people do when they're sitting at a bar drinking, trying to make conversation. I want you to go deeper than that. Again, this is why I don't like taking questions unless it's coming straight out of something from my book or something that I'm talking about. Anyway, I appreciate you being on here, and you're welcome to ask as many questions as you want. But anyway, I've said all I'm going to say about that. I did see Thundra's question. Would there be a benefit to working with Shesha if one wants to leave this dimension and move into 5D? I would say, well, if you want to work with Shesha, work with Vishnu, because Vishnu's resting on Shesha. So Shesha, I'm sure you can. There are mantras, I'm sure, directly to him, but he is the third dimension. He's the barrier of the third dimension. If we take this onion example, he's one of those layers of the onion. He's the third dimension. And Vishnu rests upon him. So, I mean, if you want to get beyond the third dimension, then you would want to worship Vasuki. But again, Vasuki serves Shiva. So Shiva, if you want to get out of the third dimension, then you would worship Shiva. If you want to worship Shiva in his connection to Vasuki, then you would chant to Shiva as Nageshwara. Om Namo Bhagavate Nageshwaraya. See, Om Namo Bhagavate Nageshwaraya. Yep, 12 syllables. I'll write it down here for you. Om Namo Bhagavate Nageshwaraya. Nageshwaraya. Oops. Or Om Nageshwaraya Nama. Then you're chanting to the Lord of the Nagas. Any other questions? All right, that's it. I don't see anything else. Thank you guys so much for showing up. If you're new to the channel, we didn't talk about it a lot, but if you really want to have the power to be able to make this shift, then I recommend that you go to the 90-day challenge, which is thunderwizard.com. Subscribe to the Warrior 90-day Lightning Qigong. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. If you want all of my video courses, including the most powerful physical energetic practice, which is the Maoshan 5-element spirit fighting, I'm giving that all away almost for nothing. You can go to 923.thunderwizard.com. My books, Michael William Denny. Again, if you ask questions about stuff I teach, it makes me happy. So the more that you learn, the more of my books that you read, the more of my videos that you watch, if you ask questions about that having to do with getting over an issue or transforming or evolving, those questions make me happy. As you can see, other questions tend to annoy me, and I don't like myself when I'm annoyed, so that's why I try not to answer questions from newbies. So that's it. My books: Interdimensional Revolution, Extraterrestrials Are Coming to Earth, and The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. Those are the three most important, which you can get at michaelwilliamdenny.com, or you can just go find them anywhere on Amazon, Kindle, or Audible. And that's it. I think we're all done. Thank you guys so much. I love you all. Thank you all for showing up. If I did anything to hurt anybody's feelings, please don't take it personally. That's just the way that I do it. My intent is to always be helpful. And in fact, my entire focus of my life is to do everything I can to help everybody evolve in whatever way is best for them. So forgive me if I'm limited and I make mistakes, because I do. Having said that, I love you all, and I'm so appreciative of you, and keep doing the work. Keep working on yourselves, because every time you work on yourself, you empower me and every other conscious being. And the gods and the Nagas all thank you for your existence, and they all marvel at your unbelievable bravery and power that you're able to be a human being and survive. No other being in the universe has that kind of power. So if you're a human being, it means that you are one of the most powerful deities that's ever been manifested out of spirit. And the more that you succeed in your life, the more power you gain for yourself, for your ultimate, deityhood. Keep overcoming. Drop the victim mentality, drop the anger, drop the fear, and surrender to your true self. And the time, I guarantee you, will come when you will live in the most beautiful light of your own making. Having said that, I love you all. I will see you guys all next time. If I don't get beamed up to the Starship Enterprise, or if the Flash don't come, I will see you all very soon. Please take care.